Hello everyone, welcome to Beaver's Hobby channel. Here is a quick review of the Ark Edge AE24X. I just want to share my first thought and the result of my first test drive. So let's get on with it. First of all, I really like that it can get parallel steering even at the narrowest configuration. The shortest and narrowest setup is 94mm wheelbase and 73mm width. My setup is 98mm wheelbase and 76mm width. The measurements for the linkages are on the screen. You can pause and check them out. Two turns for the front shocks. And fully down for the rear shocks. And I also add 8.1 grams weight to the front. This is probably not the optimal, but it is what I got working right now. So I'll let you know if I find anything new. Let's take a quick look at the design. It is quite unique and it provides easy adjustments and tuning. However, the execution cannot keep up with the design. What I have here is most likely the first batch. All the problems have been forwarded to Ark Edge, and hopefully the car you are buying right now is much better. Still, I feel that it is my duty to inform you of what I have found, because I ran into a few problems while building it. First, the rods are extremely difficult to install, especially at the front. I had to balance between forcing the rods in without bending them. And then there's the gearbox. Somehow the dimensions are a little bit off and it interferes with the lower arms. It should be a little bit wider than this for the suspension to work, and I had to put some washers in it to adjust the width. This resulted in the rear missing one screw, because there's a washer in the way and I couldn't put the screw in. And then there's a missing part. The manual says that this step has 2 M2 grub screws, and there are indeed 2 M2 grub screws in the back. So far so good, right? But when I actually followed the instruction, it actually needs 4 M2 grub screws, which are nowhere to be found. I could only find one spare in the kit. So I took one from the front body post and put it in here. And then just use a normal M2 screw at the front. Next, the suspension. The complicated front suspension actually works. There's no problem with the design. However, these tubes are a little bit too short and the shocks come apart way too easily. You can just pick the car up and the springs would just fall off. We can fix this by turning the shaft so it goes into the bell part. However, this will preload the suspension and make it stiffer with less travel. As for the power system, this car doesn't need a lot of power. Right now I'm using the 5500 kV motor, and it is too much for my 1.5 by 2 meter track. I even set the throttle EPA to 50% and I barely use all the throttle. So my plan is to replace this with the 3500 kV, and that'll be alright. As for the handling, it is pretty much on edge, so the name is pretty apt. With all the weight towards the back, the front feels really light. But even with the slight feel of understeer, the back swings out pretty easily, and it stays there. However, once the rear steps out, the margin between drifting and spinning out is rather small. So I have to work the throttle and steering a lot more to keep the car in check. All in all, it is quite challenging to drive, and if you are up for it, you'll have a great time. And that's it for this video. I'm trying to get the full review out, but I don't know when it's gonna be, so whenever it comes out, you're gonna see it. Anyway, thanks as always for watching, and see you again next time.